waiting for something from Tina real quick, and I'll be starting in a moment. I want to say thank you for all of you for being here. I know what a difficult year it's been. I'm sure we are all coming here with heavy hearts. I want to just take a moment to remind you our purpose of this gathering. It's to be a time of remembrance, a time of healing, and a time of reflection. It is, as we would for September 11th, the day that we remember those who have passed. We're not looking beyond that. Today is about those who died on October 7th. We also keep in mind those who are hostages. Layers of Grief by Abraham Joshua Heschel. There's a Hasidic homily that describes 3 levels of grief. The first level is tears, crying, the simplest and most common way people express sorrow. The second level, slightly more elevated, is silence. The third level, which the homily describes as the greatest of all, is song. Crying expresses our pain, silence, our courage. But singing expresses our life. In song, we praise those who made our lives possible and who grant our lives meaning. We're about to watch Agam Yosefson's story. It is a difficult story. I'm giving you that warning in advance. But it is a powerful testament to the resilience and the bravery that people showed during those events on October 7th. This video encapsulates those feelings, the spirit of hope and strength that came through even amidst unimaginable challenges. So if you will hang on, we will watch her. This is sand art, by the way, and they'll tell you a little bit about it at the beginning.
Saturday morning, October 7th. The sun hasn't yet had time to shine when a great darkness descended on Israel. Rays of light brings the stories of the heroic women from the day the earth was painted red.
Agam Yosefson.
We got to the Nova party, me, my boyfriend Itamar, and another couple of friends. When we realized what was going on, that missiles were flying around, we took off in a run. We got to the Re'im junction with our car, where we decided to get in the mobile shelter at the junction. We didn't realize terrorists got into Israel at that time. We were just looking for shelter from the missiles. We started hearing the terrorists shouting. The mobile shelter is a very small place. There were about 25 of us in there, maybe more, packed in like sardines in that tiny space. I'm trying to calm my heart down. The terrorists are really close now. I can hear them outside the mobile shelter. They throw the first grenade in. Someone picked it up and tried to run out with it. They shot him. They are throwing in another one and another one. When one of the grenades blew up, I felt like I was dead. Like I'm gone. I felt my body turn into this tiny creature, like someone's folding me into myself and I'm sucked into this black space. I couldn't hear or see anything. I felt at peace. I was just wondering to myself what happens when you die, and when does the beat where my life flashes before my eyes start to happen. I could actually feel my body stopping. I couldn't feel my heartbeat. I had voices in my head, like these ghosts whispering things to me. I felt like I didn't have a body anymore, like everything shrank down to nothing. I saw and felt this large spot in my head going upwards. It felt like it was my soul. And then suddenly I managed to hear Itamar telling me, "Stay with me." It echoed in my head like someone was talking to me through a microphone with a reverb effect on it. And I told him, "Can you hear me?" And he answered, "Yeah, I can hear you. Stay with me." And at that moment, I was shocked that he could even hear me. I was certain that I was in another world by then, that I'm not here anymore. I told him, "I can't hold on. I'm dead." And he repeated these words again, "Stay with me. Stay with me." I told him, "I'm afraid that if I come back now, I'll never be who I used to be ever again." And all Itamar was asking for was for me to be there with him. And then I felt my soul coming back. I opened my eyes and I feel a lot of blood all over me. I don't know if it's my blood or the blood of others around me. I wipe the blood off my face with my hands. I can see everything is all orange and dusty. I hear people praying Shema Israel and I join in, reciting what I know from that blessing. I close my eyes and try to calm myself down. And then a terrorist started spraying us with bullets. Lots of gunfire all over the mobile shelter, and I'm just curling up, plugging my ears, calming myself down, just hoping Itamar is here next to me and that he's alive. The only thing I wanted to see was him. The terrorist finished shooting and left. I opened my eyes and saw the body of my friend's girlfriend, the same friend we went to the party with. She braided my hair before the party, made me feel as safe as one can be, and now she's lying down on my legs, dead. Blood everywhere, people screaming, the ones who can still scream with pain, and we can still hear terrorists outside, but we have no idea what's going on. And I can't understand. Where are the people who are supposed to protect me? Where are the people who are supposed to watch over me? Itamar shielded me with his body through the whole thing. We hid behind people's corpses. Itamar always told me to smile and that everything will be okay. We have this thing where we pinky swear about all sorts of things we want to make sure will happen. When this whole event started, we pinky swore that we'd get out of there alive, and we haven't lost hope for even one moment. But it still felt like none of the rescue forces even cared. We were afraid that we were all going to just die there, without food or water. Itamar and me, and a few other survivors, stayed in that mobile shelter for hours before the rescue forces came in. The two friends we came with were murdered, and another friend was kidnapped. Dozens of people were murdered in that mobile shelter. Every time I remember it, my heart runs at 200 beats a minute, and I'm shaking all over. I'm only 20. Now, someone tell me, does it make sense to you that I had to go through this just to live my life? in my country, in peace.
Continue with a poem called Silent Witnesses by Rabbi Hannah Yerushalmi. This is a poem written about the same festival that we just heard about. When you go to Re'im, to that sacred ground, notice the trees, silent witnesses to the horrors, dazed and rooted, their best limbs could not lift up the fallen. Their sturdy trunks could not shield the vulnerable. Their broad leaves could not shelter the wounded. When the breeze comes in the south, if you listen carefully, you can hear those trees. Somber filigree pillars, always rising, reeling, whispering, Yit Gedal v'Yit Kadash Shemei Rabbah. And in the distance, the shifting sands utter a mournful Amen. video that we watched called Habaita. Habaita means to go homeward. 1,000 Israeli musicians and singers gathered. Maybe you noticed the location, but it was an ancient Caesarea amphitheater. And they sang together in order to bring faith and hope that the hostages will come back. We read a poem by Alden Solovi, Cry Out. Cry out to the heavens for the innocent taken captive. Cry out to the earth, soaked in so much blood. Rail at the sky for the raped and the tortured on that burial day of hate embodied and evil incarnate. God O grief of griefs, O sorrow of sorrows, O heartache of heartaches, my bed is soaked in tears. I have become ashes and sackcloth. My heart refuses consolation. For what consolation can there be with so many murdered and kidnapped, brutalized and maimed on a single day of terror? God of compassion, grant a perfect rest under your canopy of peace to those murdered on October 7th, 2023, those whose bodies were snatched, those who expired in captivity, and to those who fell defending their homes and the land on that day, and the days, weeks, and months to come. God of mercy, God of all life, bless the defenders and the protectors of Israel with safety and strength. Bless our military and political leaders with wisdom and fortitude. Bless us all with hope for the day when peace at long last comes for the people of Israel, for all of the inhabitants of the land, for our neighbors, and for all of the Middle East, and throughout the four corners of the earth. God of mercy, did you just push it? Grant release from the terrors and nightmares of captivity to the hostages who have been freed, and to those who remain prisoners in body or spirit, them, their families, the friends, and all whom they've touched. Grant refuah shlema to all of the wounded and injured of body and soul. One more. Another. Push the arrow. Again. Thank you. Many of you are familiar with Hirsch Goldberg Poland, who was 23 years old. Hirsch was an American Israeli who made Aliyah to Israel with his family when he was only 11. Of course, we got to meet his parents because they advocated daily for his release. They traversed the globe many times, speaking with world leaders, pleading for Hirsch to come home. Hirsch turned 23 just days before the Nova Festival. He went with his friend Avner. As they fled the festival, they hid in a bomb shelter. Hamas terrorists threw grenade after grenade into the shelter. His friend threw them back out until one of them took his life. That grenade took off Hirsch's left arm, which was his dominant arm. Hamas terrorists took him to Gaza, but after 328 days of being held hostage, Hamas terrorists executed Hirsch, along with Eden Yerushalmi, Carmel Gat, Almog Sarusi, Alex Lubinov, and Ori Danino. Hirsch was an advocate for justice and a pursuer of peace. He worked to bring Israeli and Palestinian children together through soccer. Every time his mother, Rachel, spoke, she called to Hirsch, saying, "Stay strong and survive." Did you move it? It's your turn. Nope. Go back one.
Okay, sweet boy, go now on your journey. I hope it's as good as the trips you dreamed about, because finally, my sweet boy, finally, you're free. I will love you and I will miss you every single day for the rest of my life. But you're right here. I know you're right here. I just have to teach myself how to feel you in a different way. And Harsh, there's one last thing I need you to do for us. Now I need you to help us stay strong. And I need you to help us survive.
This next poem is B'Shavurei Lev. Again, shavar is the root of this word, which I talked about the other night, the same word for shavarim, or brokenness. Who knows every pain, who repairs every broken heart, creates light and darkness, makes peace and war, who sits in judgment, covers in mercy, pardons and forgives, sees all and knows all, and who will heal my heart, for whom I am longing, like a sea that has no shore. Just tell me who will embrace me and ensure that I will not give up in the end. Who was, is, and will be, who takes and gives renewed life, open arms, grow wings, and who will heal my heart, for whom I am longing, for whom am I longing, like a sea that has no shore. Just tell me who will embrace me and ensure that I will not give up in the end. It's really all about audio, believe it or not. Yeah, no, go back. That's the problem.
מי יודע כל כאב, מי רופא לי שבורי לב, יוצא אור החושך, עושה שלום ומלחמה. מי יושב על כיסא דין, מתכסה ברחמים, מוכן וסולח, מביט ויודע, ומי ירפא ליבי, אל מי אני מתגעגע, כמו ים שאינו חוף, רק תגיד לי מי יחבק אותי, והבטיח שאני לא אכנע בסוף. מי היה עובר יהיה, מי ממית ומחיה, פותח ידיים, מצמיח כנפיים, ומי ירפא ליבי, אל מי אני שאני לא אכנע בסוף, שאני לא אכנע בסוף. ים שאין לו חוף, רק תגיד לי מי יחבק אותי והבטיח שאני לא אכנע בסוף, שאני לא אכנע בסוף.
New Torah by Rabbi Elchanan Nir. Now, like a breath of fresh air, we need a new Torah, grasping for air and with choking throats. We need a new Mishnah and a new Gemara and a new Kabbalah and new elevations of the soul. And inside all the wreckage and the salt in the desert land, now a new Chassidut and a new Zionism and a new Rabbi Cook and a new Brenner and new Leah Goldberg and new Yachave Da'at. El Malei Rachamim. These words have been modified by Rabbi Dr. Karen Rice Medwed. We can move to the next screen and the next. Exalted, compassionate God, grant perfect peace in your sheltering presence among the holy and the pure, whose radiance is like the heavens to the souls of all those who perished, citizens of Israel and citizens of countries around the world, Am Yisrael and all who dwell on earth, who were killed, who were murdered, who were strangled and bombed, who were tortured and who were raped, beaten and tormented, and were cruelly slaughtered on that fateful Simchat Torah. And the souls of the defense personnel, the Israeli police, the defense forces, the emergency squads, the observers, and the IDF, who gave their lives as heroes of Israel. May their memories be a blessing, and may they rest in paradise. Master of mercy, may they find eternal shelter beneath your sheltering wings, and may their souls be bound up in the bond of life. Adonai is their portion. May they rest in peace. And let us say, Amen.
ישראל הנתונים בצרה ובשביה העומדים בין בים ובין ביבשה.
The Achenu prayer that we just heard is one that I spoke about on Kol Nidre, which was just last night. No, it wasn't. I spoke about it on Rosh Hashanah. But this video is one that has a story. It was during the 2014 Gaza war, under constant fire, that Tamar Kedem Simantov and Sagui Dekel Chen built what they call Bikorim, a youth village for young musicians living on the Gaza border. On October 7th, Tamar was murdered with her entire family. Sagui was kidnapped to Gaza. The version we just listened to of Achenu, the prayer to redeem the hostages, was sung by alumni from that Bikurim village. The next piece that we will have has to go back to my trip to Israel from January. Of the many people that we spoke with, there was one story that I didn't include because I thought that it was too difficult. Some of you probably read my journal. And The person is named Noam, and Noam's story is a difficult one, but I think it's important for us to hear what it was like for the survivors of the Nova Festival. I'm going to ask Rabbi Sobo to read that for me.
Noam is 45, divorced, and has 3 children. We sat across from each other at the table, and he shared his story. It poured out of him. It was a therapy of sorts. Noam worked diligently servicing computers, a job that provided for his family, but never quite fulfilled his spirit. He has a love of music and had heard amazing things about the Nova Festival, how it wasn't like any festival he had ever heard of. So with his girlfriend Jenny, who also has children, they decided to load some chairs into the car, a mattress in the back, and headed to the desert. They weren't sure if the festival would truly be for them, but thought to themselves, if it wasn't something they were enjoying, they could go camping and picnic somewhere else in the desert. They weren't afraid. They had no sense of trepidation. After all, it was just a festival in the country. When they got there, they noticed that everyone there was so nice and happy. They were all so beautiful. In fact, everything was beautiful. The environment, the people, not just the external, but their souls. These are the types of people who organize having tubes so that when they put out their cigarettes, they put the butts into so as not to disrupt the environment. The next day, they were awakened by the sound of what they thought were fireworks. People were cheering until they noticed that they were rockets, and the red alert signal sounded. When they realized they were rockets, people got flat on the ground as they have been trained to do. Soon after, an announcement was made that the festival was closed. The music was turned off, and people could just hear the sound of the missiles. When they went to leave, there was a grassy and gravel road that leads to the main road. When you reach the main road, you are confronted with a choice. One way to the right, heading in the direction of Gaza, and the other way to the left, heading away from Gaza. Those of us sitting at the table understood what Noam was describing because we had traveled those same roads the day before. We had a good idea of what he was describing. Noam was telling us that we needed to understand that people at the festival were on all kinds of drugs and forced to make instant decisions. And most of the people there were in their 20s. So Noam placed a speaker on top of his car, playing relaxing music, and became a sort of gathering place for people to emotionally recombobulate. They had no idea that thousands of terrorists were on their way, but soon they heard gunfire, and the booming noises were getting closer, so they started driving toward the road. Along the way, people were calling to them with words like, "Please stop, my husband is wounded," and "Please stop, I have 4 children." Noam was able to fit 14 people into his car, and they drove for the main road. Finally, they hit asphalt, and when they looked to the right, it seemed clear, with a lack of smoke. When they looked to the left, they saw what seemed like thousands of cars blocking the way, with smoke and terrorists. Something didn't seem right with the open road to the right, and later he would find out that everyone who went to the right was killed, while many to the left ended up dead or wounded as well. So they made the decision to abandon their car and run to the field. That's when they saw the first body. It was a woman he had met earlier in the tent at the festival, shot in the side of the head and lying in a ditch. They were frozen, processing that they knew her and that this was real. But eventually they moved as a team through the field. They heard the first boom, and then gray smoke that turned black, indicating it was a rocket-propelled grenade. Noam had served in Lebanon for 2.5 years and had seen some things, but he said until then they hadn't quite realized that thousands of terrorists were coming to kill them. They found a small place to hide. There were policemen and security hired by the festival protecting some of the festival goers. They sacrificed their lives to save civilians. The security was shouting to them, "Run, run." They decided to return to the car, but that's when the terrorists took aim and started shooting through their windshield. Once again, they abandoned the car and returned to the field, running and passing bodies all around them. The whole time, Noam wouldn't let go of Jenny's hand, and she was unhappy about it because it prevented her from running at full speed. They ran and hid behind pomelo trees. The machine gun was not stopping to reload and was firing constantly. They heard celebratory sounds of happiness and people yelling, "Allahu Akbar." There among the leaves, they stayed as still as they could, hearing the leaves, the silence, and the sounds of people and bodies being shot to ensure they were dead on the road. One of the terrorists threw a grenade towards the tree. This was the first time Noam felt really scared, essentially saying goodbye to life. 2 weeks earlier, he had been at a surprise party and had seen friends he hadn't seen in years, people special to him. He thought to himself, at least they will have said they were fortunate to bump into me before I died. So after he heard a drone, one that Hamas had utilized looking for people in trees, it took 2 hours before he heard the first helicopter. 30 more minutes passed before he heard Hebrew being spoken. The terrorists had been 20 meters from him the whole time. Noam spent 4 hours under that tree until he eventually heard a huge explosion, and then a few minutes later saw the legs of a terrorist by the tree, the barrel of a gun, and the sound of walking in the field. The explosion had set the pomelo trees on fire. Then came smoke. He knew if they didn't run, they would burn or die of smoke inhalation. So they ran and hid behind boxes on the road that the festival goers had used to transport fruit. Noam shared that it felt like the Holocaust, the way his grandfather had explained to him what the Shoah was like. He couldn't make a sound or move. Eventually, Noam saw tanks, cops, and volunteers coming to rescue them. Nobody knew what was happening. They had to wait for someone to come rescue them. They saw hundreds of cars burned, with the dead spilling out from the doors and onto the asphalt, like a policewoman who was pulled out and shot in the head. Noam said no human brain can imagine the line of cars, the burnt bodies, and death. When they could go, they made their way to Afikim police station. Jenny kept texting her brother the whole time, but he wasn't answering. They waited a week to hear back from Shlomi, thinking maybe he had been taken to Gaza. But at the end of the week, they got the knock on the door and learned he had been murdered. Noam is obviously wounded, but he is so happy to be alive. He feels like he has a purpose and a mission. At first, he couldn't get out of bed, but now he has gotten up and is on a quest to share what happened. This is life, Noam says, and you can tell he means that life is for the living. But it has taken a toll. He says he can't really work, and there's a show in his head that he doesn't want to watch. He is raising 3 children by himself and has moments of fear, like believing in waking moments that Hamas is coming to get him again. His children are afraid there are people outside their apartment at night. He keeps asking himself if he was saved or not, because it all feels like those events occurred to him in a dream state. Noam spent some time at the Nova Festival Recovery Center, which I'll describe shortly, and people have thanked him for saving their lives when they recognize him, also for calming them with the music he played from his car. But he has heard stories there from friends that haunt him. He shared with us some horrible things that happened that I will not be sharing. But he keeps going. He keeps telling his story. He speaks of the soul and what it means to hold on to it. Israel is in so much pain, but it is diffusing throughout as the stories are told and retold, and the burden is borne by all who weep together and embrace this family that is ours.
We were a small group. There were 6 of us, and that was shared by Noah Shirkoff. As I said, I didn't believe that I could share that, but he did it so beautifully that it was something I wanted to share with you. Kaddish by Rabbi Dr. Karen Rice Medwed. Yitgedal, Kfar Aza, V'Yitkadash, Be'eri, Shemei Rabbah, the Nova Dance Festival, Be'alma Divrach Yotei, V'Yamlich Malchutei, Zikim. Nir Am, V'Hayachon, V'Yomechon, Nachal Oz, V'Chayei Dechol, Ofakim, Beit Yisrael, Ba'agalau Vizman Kariv, Sederot. Kerem Shalom, V'Yamru Amen. Yehei Shmei Rabba Mivarach Le'olam L'Olmei Almaya. Nirim. V'Yitvarach V'Yishtabach, Nir Yitzchak, V'Yitpa'ar V'Yitromam. Sha'ar HaNegev, Mikol Birchata V'Shirata, Alumim, Tushbachata V'Nechamata, Cholit, Da'amiran Bi'alma, V'Imru Amen. Yehei Shalama Rabba Min Shemaya, V'Chayim Aleinu Ve'al Kol Yisrael, V'Imru Amen. Osei Shalom B'Mromav, Huya Asei Shalom, Aleinu Ve'al Kol Yisrael, Ve'al Kol Yoshvei Tevel, V'Imru Amen. Rabbi Hannah Yerushalmi wrote Hamakom. For those of you who are familiar, Hamakom is another word for God. Hamakom will comfort you, and if not, don't worry. The land will also comfort you, and the city, and the neighborhood, and the street, and the shore, and the sun on my face. Hamakom will comfort you among the rest of the mourners of Zion and Jerusalem. Yes, forever. And also this place, this wondrous land, will comfort you. In this picture, you can see this is the group that I went with, and the person in the middle, this is Noam, Papi Barlev, the man whose story I just shared with you a few minutes ago. Go ahead and click. No, that's okay. Nizkor, we remember. Next slide. The infant nursing in its mother's arms. We remember the one sacrificed on the bed. We remember the families wrapped in each other's arms in a final embrace at home, who were killed and set afire. We remember the life partners who sat and cried a final tear in the safety shelters. We remember the parents killed hiding their children beneath their own bodies. We remember those who were out for day trips and were murdered on the road. We remember the children and young innocents who were slaughtered before their time. We remember the parents murdered in front of their loved ones. We remember the innocents dancing their final dance. We remember the peace-loving youngsters who were viciously captured, raped, and killed. We remember the cyclists on a never-ending trip. We remember the vacationers in their tents in the desert or on the beach. We remember the foreign workers who remained alongside their elders. We remember the agricultural workers from around the world. We remember the musicians whose music went silent. We remember the elders and founders. We remember the artists whose works remain forever incomplete. We remember the passers-by who encountered evil. We remember the philosophers whose last page will never be written. We remember the security forces and the police and the town security teams and the military observers and the IDF who fought a few against many, who stood and delivered, who saved lives, and who fought till the bitter end, ensuring more innocents survived. We remember. Go ahead and play.
בקרוב תזרח השמש, נדע ימים יפים מאלה, הלב נלחם בדאגות. כולם יחזרו הביתה, נחכה להם למטה, הלוואי נדע בשורות טובות. כי עם הנצח לעולם לא מפחד, אפילו כשקשה לראות. כולם ביחד, אף אחד פה לא בודד, שישרפו המלחמות. עם ישראל חי, אם לא נשכח תמיד להיות מאוחדים. עם ישראל חי, בעליות בירידות, גם בשעות הכי קשות, הקדוש ברוך הוא שומר עלינו, אז מי יכול עלינו? כי אין לנו עוד מדינה, תעשה שלום בינינו, שמור על ילדינו, כי לא עבדה האמונה. עם ישראל, עם ישראל חי. עם ישראל חי. אור ארצי נחלתנו, לא תיפול כעת רוחנו, מסביב ברזל של חרבות. ויונה תפרוס כנפיים, התקווה בת שנות 2000, עוד נצא לשיר ברחובות. כי עם הנצח לעולם לא מפחד, אפילו כשקשה לראות. כולם ביחד, אף אחד פה לא בודד, שישרפו המלחמות. עם ישראל חי, אם לא נשכח תמיד להיות מאוחדים. עם ישראל חי, בעליות בירידות, גם בשעות הכי קשות, הקדוש ברוך הוא שומר עלינו, אז מי יכול עלינו? כי אין לנו עוד מדינה, תעשה שלום בינינו, שמור על ילדינו, כי לא עבדה האמונה. הקדוש ברוך הוא שומר עלינו, אז מי יכול עלינו? כי אין לנו עוד מדינה, תעשה שלום בינינו, שמור על ילדינו, כי לא עבדה האמונה. עם ישראל, עם ישראל חי. כי עם ישראל חי.
We end on this note of Am Yisrael Chai. The people of Israel live and will live and will survive. The hope that we feel is eternal. And I want to point out that one of the things we've learned is that the expression Am Yisrael Chai, many of you have grown up singing that. It's very important to us here in America. But Am Yisrael Chai was never something that the Israelis really took to until now. And so when I see this video, it's a reminder of how important it is for them to have the spirit and the hope as we remember today all who perished and all who remain buried in the tunnels in Gaza. We pray that their memories will always be for a blessing and that we can continue to remember them as we move into the next day after. As we conclude, you'll notice on the way out that there are cards that have the names and pictures of some of the people who perished. There were more than 1,600. What you see there was only 500. I know that we have more than 500 of us here. I mean, we have less than 500 of us here. So please, as you go out, take a few of them, take a candle, take a few candles. And when you get home tonight, please light a candle and read just a little bit about them. and look at their picture and remember. Thank you. This concludes our afternoon memorial.